The silence in the Moonstone Hall was not peaceful. It was a living, breathing creature made of judgment and polished marble, and it was slowly crushing my ribs with every second I stood there. I, Alara, once Luna of the mighty Frostfang pack, stood before the high dais in a gown of midnight blue that felt less like silk and more like a burial shroud. The scent of cold stone and 100 wolves' disdain was a fog I couldn't escape. My heart was a frantic, trapped bird beating against my sternum, screaming a warning I had ignored for too long. The full moon's light streamed through the stained glass windows, painting the scene in shades of silver and accusation. It was a night for revelations, for power, and for shattering fragile things. And I was the most fragile thing of all. Alpha King Kale Frostfang stood above me, a statue carved from winter itself. His broad shoulders seemed to block out the very light, his shadow a long, cold finger pointing directly at my soul. His hair, the color of dark ash, was perfectly still. His face, the face I had once traced with trembling, hopeful fingers, was a mask of grim, unyielding resolve. But it was his eyes that truly sentenced me. Eyes like frozen lakes, depths I had once drowned in, now reflected nothing but a cold, impersonal verdict. There was no trace of the man who had, on rare, starlit nights, whispered promises that felt like forever. That man was gone. In his place was the king. His voice, when it came, was a hammer blow against the silence. Ilara of the Silverwood line. He didn't call me his. He never would again. You stand before the pack and the ancestors, accused of a fundamental failing. The bond between Alpha and Luna is the heart of our strength. It requires a power, a presence you do not possess. I forced myself to breathe, to keep my chin high even as my knees threatened to buckle. The words were coming, the words I dreaded since the first chill entered his gaze, since the elders began to look through me instead of at me. Your wolf is silent, Kale continued, each syllable a nail in the coffin of my life. It has not answered the call of the moon since you were a child. A Luna who cannot shift is a Luna in name only, a symbol of weakness where there must be unbreakable strength. The ancient pact that bound our houses, that placed you by my side, it was a promise made for peace. But a pack cannot thrive on a promise alone. It needs a true heart. A true wolf. A collective sharp inhale swept through the hall. This was it, the public unraveling of my entire existence. Therefore, Kale's voice boomed, final and absolute, by my authority as Alpha King, and with the witness of the ancestors, I sever the bond that was never truly forged. The vow is broken. You are stripped of the title of Luna. You are banished from Frostfang lands. By dawn's first light, you will be gone, and you will take nothing of this pack with you. The word banished echoed, a physical blow that stole the air from my lungs. Banished, not just sent away, but erased, unmade. The humiliation was a fire that raced across my skin, hotter than any blush. I could feel the weight of their stares, the pity from a few, the scorn from many, the sheer relief from those who had always seen me as a flawed ornament. My hands, hidden in the folds of my gown, clenched so tightly my nails bit half-moons into my palms. The pain was an anchor, the only thing keeping me from dissolving into the shame. The elders, ancient men and women draped in wolf pelts, stepped forward. The severance ritual was swift and brutal. A silver blade, cold as Kale's eyes, pricked my palm, a matching cut on his. Our blood, his potent and dominant, mine tasting of fear and tears, dripped onto a black moonstone. I felt it then, not a tearing, for our bond had been a ghostly thread, but an untying, a final silent snap of a connection that had never been allowed to grow. It was the death of a hope, the hope that he might one day see me, truly see me. As the elders chanted the old words of unbinding, my gaze found Kale's. I searched desperately for a flicker, a sign of pain, of regret, of anything other than this icy duty. There was nothing. only the stern profile of a king performing a necessary, unpleasant task. I was a weed to be pulled from his perfect garden. When it was done, he looked at me one last time and said, "You are nothing to Frostfang now." And the quiet certainty in those words was worse than the shout of banishment. "You are nothing." He turned his back. The dismissal was complete. Somehow my legs carried me. I walked and walked down the endless length of the hall, the silk of my gown whispering a traitorous sound against the marble, the sound of retreat, the sound of defeat. I did not look at the faces. I kept my eyes fixed on the great oak doors ahead, doors that now led only to exile. Each step was a mountain climbed, a battle fought against the crushing weight of my own obliteration. The cold night air outside the palace was a slap. It was clean, sharp, and free of the cloying scent of courtly judgment. I drew a ragged breath, the first real one in hours. I didn't look back at the soaring spires of the Moonstone Palace, a place that had never been a home, only a gilded cage. The moon, that mocking, beautiful eye in the sky, illuminated a single, empty path leading away from everything I had ever known. I walked. The fine slippers were shredded within an hour, the elegant gown caught on thorns and branches, tearing in silent protest. The cold seeped into my bones, a deep, aching chill that had little to do with the night air. I was a ghost, moving through a world that had no place for me, a wolfless Omega, a discarded Luna, nothing. The forest grew darker, the trees older and more forbidding. This was no longer Frostfang territory. I was in the unclaimed wilds, a place of rogue wolves and forgotten things. My exhaustion was a lead weight, but stopping felt like surrender. So I stumbled on, driven by a numb instinct to simply put distance between me and the ashes of my life. It was deep in the blackest part of the night, when the moon was hidden by a thick blanket of clouds, that I heard it. A low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate up from the earth through the soles of my ruined shoes. It was not the growl of a lone predator. It was a chorus, a hunting pack. Fear, sharper and more immediate than any humiliation, lanced through me. I froze, pressing myself against the gnarled trunk of an ancient oak. My breath fogged in the air, a betraying signal. Shadows detached themselves from the deeper darkness. 5, 6 wolves, their eyes glowing with a sickly yellow light. Rogues. Their fur was matted, their ribs showing, but their teeth were very sharp. They fanned out, surrounding me. The lead wolf, a massive beast with a scar across its muzzle, lowered its head and snarled, drool dripping from its jaws. This was how it would end, not with dignity in a palace, but as a meal in the mud for starving outcasts. A strange calm descended over me. I was too tired, too broken to even scream. Just as the lead wolf coiled its haunches to spring, a new sound shattered the night. A roar, not a growl, but a roar of pure, unadulterated fury that shook the leaves from the trees. It was a sound of absolute authority, of ancient power. The rogue wolves whimpered, flattening themselves to the ground. From between the trees, a wolf emerged. He was enormous, his fur a deep, shadowy gray like storm clouds at midnight. He was power incarnate, muscles coiled beneath a pristine coat, and his eyes, they burned with amber fire that held the warmth the moon lacked. He moved with a lethal grace that made the rogue wolves look like clumsy pups. He placed himself directly between them and me, his lips pulled back in a silent, deadly snarl that promised annihilation. The rogue leader hesitated for just a second before its hunger overrode its fear. It lunged, not at the gray wolf, but around him, aiming for me. It never made it. The gray wolf was a blur, a snap of powerful jaws, a strangled yelp, and the rogue wolf was thrown aside, crashing into a tree with a sickening crunch. It did not get up. The other rogues fled, vanishing into the shadows. Just like that, the immediate threat was gone. The great gray wolf turned, those fiery amber eyes locked on me. He took a step closer, and I stumbled back, my back hitting the gnarled oak tree. He was breathtaking and terrifying. He sniffed the air, his massive head tilting. He was scenting me, the fear, the lingering perfume of frostfang, the bitter tang of fresh bannertonate, and beneath it all, the empty, silent void where my wolf should be. Then, in a fluid motion that was both violent and beautiful, he shifted. Bones realigned, fur receded, and where the colossal wolf stood, now stood a man. He was tall, even taller than Kale, with shoulders that spoke of raw, untamed strength. His hair was the same storm cloud gray, tied back from a face that was all hard lines and sharp angles, marked by a pale scar that curved from his eyebrow to his cheek. He wore simple, dark clothes that clung to a warrior's physique, and his eyes, still that glowing amber, held an intelligence and intensity that pinned me in place. He looked at me, at my torn dress, my bare, muddy feet, my eyes wide with shock and residual terror. His gaze was assessing, piercing, but it was not cruel. "You are a long way from Frostfang, little one," he said. His voice was a deep rumble, like distant thunder on the horizon. It was not the cold, polished tone of a court king. It was the voice of the wild itself. I tried to speak, but my voice was a dry rasp. I was cast out. "I can smell it," he said simply. He took another step, not threateningly, but his presence was overwhelming, filling the space around us. The scent of a broken bond, of royal rejection. His nostrils flared again, and a silent wolf. "They banished you for that?" The direct question, spoken without a trace of the pity or disdain I was used to, undid me. A single hot tear escaped, tracing a path through the dirt on my cheek. I nodded, unable to form words. He was silent for a long moment, his amber gaze sweeping over the dark forest around us. "The wilds are no place for one who cannot call the wolf," he stated, his voice low. "The rogues were only the first. Dawn will bring worse." He looked back at me, and his eyes seemed to see past the torn gown and the tears to the shattered person beneath. "You have a choice, exile. You can stay here, and the forest will claim you by sunrise, or," he paused, and the word hung heavy with unspoken consequence, "you can come with me." "Where?" I whispered. A faint, dangerous ghost of a smile touched his lips. "To the Shadow Fen pack, my pack. I am Cassian, their alpha." Cassian? The name was a whisper on the wind, a legend, the alpha of the Shadow Fen, a pack that dwelled in the treacherous, mist-shrouded marshes bordering Frostfang. They were spoken of as savages, as wild and unpredictable as their territory. Kale had always called them the Swamp Wolves, a term of derision. Cassian, the Wild King, was offering me sanctuary, but his eyes promised it was not a simple offer of kindness. It was a challenge, a claiming. "Why?" I breathed. "Why would you help me?" His gaze held mine, unwavering. "Because a king who discards a valuable asset for its silence is a fool, and I am no fool, Alara of the Silverwood line. I see the strength it took to walk out of that hall with your head high. That is a different kind of power. Come or stay." He turned and began to walk into the deeper darkness, not waiting to see if I would follow. He moved with the absolute certainty of one who owned the very night. I looked at the empty, deadly forest around me. I looked at the fading moonlight on the path back to a kingdom that erased me. Then I looked at the retreating, powerful back of the alpha who had just saved my life and saw not a cage, but a dangerous, unknown path. With a trembling breath, I pushed myself away from the tree and followed Cassian into the shadows. I followed Cassian through a labyrinth of ancient trees and thickening mist. The ground grew soft and spongy underfoot, the air cool and damp, carrying unfamiliar scents of decaying leaves, stagnant water, and rich black earth. My torn gown was soaked to the knees, my feet numb with cold. Cassian never looked back, but he never moved too fast for me to keep his broad back in sight, a dark silhouette against the graying pre-dawn fog. Just as my legs threatened to give out completely, the mist parted. We emerged into a clearing, but it was nothing like any pack settlement I had ever imagined. There were no stone buildings, no grand hall. Instead, dwellings were woven into the very fabric of the swamp. Homes built on sturdy platforms nestled between giant cypress trees, connected by rope bridges that swayed gently in the misty air. Lanterns glowed with a soft greenish bioluminescence, casting eerie, beautiful reflections on the dark water below. It was a place that lived and breathed with the land, not dominating it. As we approached, figures emerged. Wolves, both in human and animal form, watched from platforms in the shadows of trees. Their eyes, many glowing with the same amber hue as Cassian's, were wary, curious. The scent of the pack was strong here, moss, waterweed, and a potent, wild musk that was utterly foreign after the crisp pine and snow scent of Frostfang. A woman stepped forward on the main platform. She had hair the color of dried willow and eyes of a softer, honeyed amber. She wore practical trousers and a tunic, her arms adorned with intricate tattoos that looked like swirling vines. Her gaze swept over me, taking in my bedraggled state, before settling on Cassian with a respectful nod. "Alpha, you bring a guest from the cold lands." Her voice was melodic, yet held an undercurrent of steel. "This is Alara," Cassian said, his voice carrying easily in the damp air. "She is under my protection, Lyra. See that she is given shelter, clothes, and food." A murmur rippled through the gathered pack. Protection, the word had weight here. Lyra's eyes widened slightly, but she bowed her head. "As you command." She turned to me, and her expression, while not warm, was not unkind. "Come, child, you look like you've danced with the bog spirits and lost." I followed her across a swaying bridge to a small, well-built platform house. Inside, it was warm and dry, smelling of herbs and smoked fish. Lyra handed me a bundle of soft gray cloth, simple trousers and a tunic, and a pair of sturdy boots. "These will serve you better than Frostfang's silk here," she said matter-of-factly. She pointed to a curtained-off area. "Wash. The water is warm. I will bring stew." The simple kindness, so devoid of ceremony or judgment, threatened to break me all over again. In the privacy of the washing area, I finally let the silent sobs shake my shoulders. I washed the mud and the scent of fear from my skin, but the invisible stain of banishment felt permanent. When I emerged in the dry clothes, feeling like a stranger in my own skin, Lyra had placed a wooden bowl of rich, fragrant stew on a low table. "Eat," she commanded gently. "Then you will sleep. The fen has you now. Its secrets can wait for tomorrow." I ate mechanically, the food tasting like ashes, but the warmth spread through my cold core. As I finished, the curtain at the entrance shifted and Cassian ducked inside. He filled the small space with his presence. Lyra quietly slipped out. He looked at me, now clean and dressed in his pack's clothing. "The mark on your palm," he said without preamble, "the severance scar. It is a beacon to any who would seek to use you against Frostfang, or simply see you as vulnerable prey, a rejected omega from a royal line as a political tool, or a target." I instinctively curled my hand into a fist, hiding the faint silvery line. What choice do I have? It is done. "In the fen, nothing is ever truly finished," Cassian said, his amber eyes intense. "A mark can be overshadowed. To survive here, to be safe under my protection, you cannot be seen as unclaimed. The wild does not respect vacancy." A cold dread, different from before, trickled down my spine. Overshadowed? How? He didn't answer directly. Instead, he reached into a pouch at his belt and pulled out a small object. It was a pendant on a leather cord, carved from a dark, iridescent stone. It was shaped like a wolf's head, its eyes two tiny, gleaming amber chips that caught the lantern light. "This is bog iron and fen fire amber," he said. "It is a marker of the shadow fen. To wear it is to be under the pack's covenant." He held it out. "This is the first step. It tells the forest and any who cross your path that you are not alone, that you are connected to this place and to me." It wasn't a collar, but it felt like one. A visible, tangible symbol of a new bond, one I was entering blindly. I looked from the pendant to his face. His expression was unreadable, but his gaze was unwavering. This was the price of the sanctuary he offered. not just obedience, but a public, symbolic claiming. My fingers trembled as I reached out. Taking the pendant felt like a decision far greater than following him through the forest. It was an acceptance. I lifted the cord and slipped it over my head. The stone settled cool and heavy against my chest, a new weight to replace the one that had been torn away. A faint, almost imperceptible change seemed to flicker in Cassian's eyes, a satisfaction, deep and primal. "Good," he rumbled. "Now rest. Lyra will begin your integration tomorrow." He left, and the small house felt suddenly vast and empty. I lay on the bed of furs, the bog iron pendant resting over my heart. I could hear the strange, nocturnal sounds of the fen, the croak of frogs, the whisper of reeds, the distant splash of something moving in the water. It was a lullaby for a world I didn't understand. My last thought before sleep drags me under was not of Kale's cold eyes, but of Cassian's burning amber gaze, and the unsettling feeling that in saving me, he had set a new, unpredictable fate into motion. The next days were a blur of alien rhythms. Lyra was a patient but no-nonsense guide. She taught me about the edible plants of the fen, the way to purify water, how to move silently across the spongy ground. I learned that the pack's strength came from harmony with their harsh environment, not conquest over it. They were hunters, trackers, and masters of the unseen paths through the mist. I also met others. Riven, Cassian's stern but fair beta, who watched me with cautious assessment. Kale, a young fierce warrior with a quick smile, who seemed fascinated by the frost-born exile. The pack, while wary, gradually accepted my presence. They didn't treat me as a broken Luna, but as a new, strange entity under their alpha's mysterious protection. Cassian himself was a distant but constant force. I would feel his gaze on me during training sessions with Lyra, or see him observing from the high platform he used as a den. We rarely spoke, but his presence was a hum in the background of my new life, a reminder of the dangerous bargain I had made. One afternoon, Lyra took me to a still, black pool deep in a cypress grove. The water's surface was like dark glass, reflecting the twisted branches above. "This is a seeing pool," she said softly. "The waters here sometimes show truths, not the future, not clearly, but reflections of the heart, of hidden things." She gestured for me to kneel by the edge. "Look, not with your eyes, but with the place your wolf should be." I stared into the obsidian water. At first, I saw only my own pale, anxious face reflected back, the bog iron pendant stark against my tunic. Then the water seemed to swirl, though there was no wind. The reflection shimmered and changed. I saw not myself, but a wolf, a beautiful, sleek she-wolf with fur like silver frost and eyes of clear, moonlit blue. She was pacing behind a wall of thick, opaque ice, her muzzle pressed against it, a silent howl trapped in her throat. I gasped, jerking back. The image vanished, leaving only my own wide-eyed reflection. "What did you see?" Lyra asked, her voice gentle. "A wolf," I whispered, my heart aching. "My wolf, but she's trapped behind ice." Lyra nodded slowly, a knowing look in her honeyed eyes. Not absent, imprisoned, by fear, perhaps, by the cold words of a cold king. The bond they severed was political, but the damage it did to your spirit, that built the wall. She placed a hand on my shoulder. "The fen melts things, Elora. It is a place of decay, but also of regrowth. Maybe it can melt that ice." A fragile, terrifying hope sparked in my chest for the first time since my banishment. Could it be true? Was my wolf merely sleeping, frozen, and not dead? That night, as the pack gathered around the central fire built on a stone hearth in the water, Cassian called for me. The pack fell silent. He stood before them, the firelight dancing on the planes of his face, making his amber eyes look like living flames. "Elora has worn our mark for a week," he announced, his voice carrying over the lap of water. "She learns our ways, but a mark of stone is not enough. The wild requires a deeper vow, a promise of loyalty, and in return, a promise of protection that is felt in the blood and bone." He turned to me. "The Shadow Fen offers you more than sanctuary, Elora. It offers you a place, a true place, but to hold it, you must accept the Fen's claim, a ritual that will tie your fate to this land and to this pack, as surely as the roots tie the cypress to the mud." My mouth dried. "What does it entail?" "An exchange of vows," Cassian said, his eyes holding me, "and a mingling of blood with the waters of the Fen. It will not create a mate bond. It is a pact of allegiance. It will, however, forever change your scent. It will overshadow the mark of Frostfang's rejection with the signature of the Shadow Fen. You will be, in the eyes of the moon and any who sent you, ours." It was a point of no return. To do this would be to truly renounce Frostfang, not just in distance, but in spirit. It would be to bind myself to Cassian and his wild pack irrevocably. I looked around at the faces illuminated by the fen fire. Lyra gave a slight encouraging nod. Riven's expression was neutral, waiting. Kale looked eager. These people had given me shelter without scorn. They saw potential, not just a flaw. And then I thought of Kale Frostfang, who saw me as nothing, who let me walk into the deadly forest without a back glance. I turned back to Cassian. The firelight reflected in his eyes, and for a fleeting second, I thought I saw not just the Alpha's demand, but a glimpse of something else, a fierce, protective pride. "I accept," I said, and my voice did not shake. A low, approving hum rose from the pack. Cassian extended his hand. "Then come." He led me to the water's edge, away from the fire. Lyra followed, bearing a small, carved bowl made of dark wood. Cassian took a ceremonial dagger from his belt. The blade was made of the same dark bog iron as my pendant. He drew it quickly across his own palm, letting a few drops of his blood fall into the bowl. Then he took my hand. His touch was warm, his fingers calloused. He turned my palm up, exposing the silvery severance scar. With a precise motion, he traced the dagger over the old scar. A sharp sting and fresh, bright blood welled up, dripping to mingle with his in the bowl. Lyra chanted in an old, guttural language, her voice blending with the sounds of the fen. Cassian held our clasped hands over the bowl, our blood mixing together. Then Lyra took the bowl and poured the mingled blood into the dark waters of the swamp. The effect was immediate and startling. Where the blood hit the water, a soft, amber light glowed from beneath the surface, spreading in ripples before fading. A warm, tingling sensation traveled up my arm from the cut on my palm, spreading through my body. It felt like drinking strong, spiced wine. The world sharpened. The sense of the fen, the decay, the life, the water, the pack became vividly clear, layered, and somehow familiar. The constant, cold emptiness in my chest where my wolf should be, it didn't fill, but it warmed, as if a distant sun had turned its light towards a frozen field. Cassian released my hand. He looked at me, and his gaze was heavy with significance. "It is done. You are bound to the fen, Ilara, and the fen is bound to you. Your old life is gone. Your new one begins now." He leaned closer, his voice dropping so only I could hear it over the suddenly loud beating of my own heart. And soon, little frost wolf, we will see about melting that ice." He straightened and walked back to the fire, leaving me standing at the water's edge, my blood singing with a new strange power and the uncanny feeling that Cassian knew far more about the wolf trapped behind ice than he had ever let on. The game had changed. The sanctuary had become a covenant, and I was no longer just an exile. I was part of the Shadow Fen. The real question now was, what did its alpha truly want with me? Life in the Shadow Fen settled into a rhythm as strange and deep as the heartbeat of the swamp itself. The Fen's claim ritual had changed me. It was a subtle shift, felt more in the blood and senses than seen in a mirror. The silvery scar on my palm, once a brand of rejection, was now crossed by a thin, darker line from Cassian's blade, a mark of allegiance that seemed to hum with a low, warm energy when I focused on it. The scents of the pack were no longer just smells. They were a tapestry of information. Riven's steady, earthy determination, Lyra's sharp, herbal wisdom, Kale's youthful, restless energy, and over it all, the dense, powerful signature of Cassian, like petrichor in ancient stone. He was an ever-present shadow, my enigmatic protector. He never sought me out for idle talk, but I was never truly out of his sight. During my lessons with Lyra on identifying venomous frogs or weaving waterproof reed mats, I would glance up and find him watching from across a murky channel, perched on a high root like a great bird of prey. His gaze was always assessing, weighing, as if waiting for something to crack open inside me. The spark of hope Lyra had ignited, the vision of my wolf trapped behind ice, became a secret fire I tended. During my solitary moments, I would retreat to the edge of the settlement, close my eyes, and try to reach for that inner wall. I would imagine the warm, humid air of the fen seeping through the cracks, melting the frost. Sometimes I felt a faint stirring, a distant thump against the ice, like a heartbeat heard through a thick door. It was agony and ecstasy, proof of life, yet a reminder of the prison. One evening, as a thick white mist rolled in from the deeper bog, swallowing the world in a silent cocoon, Lyra found me at the seeing pool. "The mist speaks tonight," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "It carries old stories. Listen not with your ears, child. Listen with the new bond. The fen is trying to tell you something." I sat on the damp ground, the bog iron pendant cool against my skin, and let the mist envelop me. The usual night sounds faded, replaced by an immense damp quiet. And then, whispers. Not words, but impressions, feelings carried on the vapor. I felt a profound, ancient loneliness, the fen itself, misunderstood and feared. I felt the fierce, protective love of the pack for their difficult home. And then, sharper, cutting through the rest, I felt a pulse of raw, possessive satisfaction. It was a dark, warm emotion, threaded with a startling strand of anticipation. It felt familiar. It felt like Cassian. My eyes flew open, the mist swirled, and for a moment it seemed to coalesce into a shape, the massive gray wolf with amber eyes, watching me. Then it dissolved. "What did you hear?" Lyra asked, her own eyes wide in the gloom. "It feels watched, not just protected, wanted," I breathed, the realization chilling me despite the humid air. "The Alpha's intentions are his own, but the land agrees with him. It has accepted you, Alara, more quickly than I have ever seen. That is no small thing." She paused. "There is a place, deeper in, a grove of stone willows where the water never freezes even in the heart of winter. The pack goes there for true healing, for confronting inner shadows. Perhaps it is a place from melting ice." I told Cassian of Lyra's suggestion the next day, finding him on his platform, mending a fishing net with deft, strong fingers. He paused, his amber gaze lifting to mine. "The Heartspring Grove," he said, nodding slowly. "It is a powerful place. The waters there come from a deep thermal source. They hold the memory of the earth's fire." He studied me. "You wish to go?" "I need to know if the ice can be broken," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. A slow, approving smile touched his lips, there and gone in an instant. "Then we will go, at the next full moon. Its light will guide the way through the deepest mist, and its power will amplify the spring's energy. He returned to his mending, the decision made. Prepare yourself, Ilara. The grove does not give up its secrets easily. You must be ready to face what the ice has hidden. His words were a promise and a warning. The days until the full moon stretched, filled with a new kind of tension. My training with Lyra intensified. She taught me breathing exercises to calm the mind and songs in the old tongue that were said to soothe restless spirits, both the Fen's and one's own. I practiced for hours, the strange melodies feeling more natural on my tongue than the courtly ballads of Frostfang ever had. Kale, the young warrior, often joined me on these practices, his curiosity about the frost-born who sings to the swamp unabated. "You're different, you know," he said one afternoon as we gathered medicinal moss. "Not just the no-wolf thing. After the claim, you smell like us now, but with a shimmer of cold starlight on top. It's interesting." I smiled wryly. "I'm glad I'm not just a political inconvenience." He grinned. "Oh, you're that too. Riven grumbles about it constantly, but the Alpha doesn't do anything without reason. He sees something. We all do now." His grin faded into thoughtfulness. "Just be careful at the heart spring. It shows truths. Not everyone likes what they see." The night of the full moon arrived, shrouding the fen in a spectral silver light that pierced the perpetual mist, creating corridors of illuminated vapor. Cassian led the way, moving with an unerring certainty through paths that seemed to appear only as we approached them. Lyra and Riven followed, and Kale brought up the rear. I walked behind Cassian, the bog iron pendant a steady weight, my heart a drum against my ribs. We traveled for hours, deeper than I had ever been. The air grew warmer, thicker with the scent of minerals and growing things. Strange, luminous fungi glowed on tree trunks, and the sounds of life were more vibrant, more secretive. Finally, we pushed through a curtain of hanging moss into a clearing. The Heart Spring Grove took my breath away. In the center, a pool of water steamed gently, its surface reflecting the full moon like a second, brighter orb in the earth. Around it stood trees with pale, smooth bark that drooped towards the water, their leaves shimmering with captured moisture. The energy here was palpable, a low, vibrant thrum that resonated in my teeth. "This is the place," Cassian said, his voice reverent, "the heart of the fen. Its waters remember the first fire." He turned to me. "To challenge the ice within, you must enter the spring, but you do not go alone. The grove must witness your intent, and your Alpha must anchor you to this world, lest you lose yourself in the depths of your own spirit." He began to undress, his movements practical and unconcerned with modesty. Riven and Kale turned their backs, giving privacy. Lyra helped me out of my tunic and trousers. The warm, damp air caressed my skin. Cassian now, naked, walked into the steaming pool until he was waist deep. He turned and held out a hand to me. My face heated, but this was not a moment for false propriety. This was a ritual. Taking a steadying breath, I walked into the water. It was hot, almost uncomfortably so, and rich with minerals that tingled against my skin. I waited to him, the moon painting our bodies in silver and shadow. His hand closed around mine, his grip firm and sure. "Look at me, Ilara," he commanded softly. "Only at me. Whatever you see, whatever you feel in the water, my eyes are your anchor. Do not let go." I nodded, my throat tight. Lyra began to chant from the shore, her voice weaving with the plumes of steam. Cassian's amber eyes held mine, a fixed point in the swirling, mystical energy of the grove. "Now," he murmured, "reach for the ice and let the spring's memory of fire do its work." I closed my eyes, but his command echoed, "Look at me." I opened them again, locking onto his gaze. I turned my focus inward, towards the wall of ice in my mind's eye. I imagined the steaming, mineral-rich water seeping into that frozen landscape, carrying the earth's warmth. At first, nothing. Then, a drip. A single echoing plink of water falling in a cavern. The ice was sweating. The distant thump came again, stronger, more frantic. The she-wolf behind the wall was throwing herself against it. Pain lanced through my temples, a sharp, cracking cold. I gasped, but Cassian's hand tightened, his gaze unwavering. "Hold on." His voice was a rough anchor in my rising panic. "It must break before it can heal." The thumps became a barrage, cracks spiderwebbed across the mental ice, glowing with the blue-white light. The heat from the spring roared in my veins, battling the inner frost. It was agony, a war inside my soul. I cried out, my body trembling in the hot water. "Look at me!" Cassian's voice was a whip crack, pulling me back from the brink of screaming madness. I clung to his eyes, to the fierce, unwavering amber fire in them. They were my tether to reality. With a soundless, psychic shatter, the wall exploded. A wave of pure, raw power erupted from my core. It was not the controlled shift of a born shifter. It was a cataclysm. A roar tore from my human throat, a sound of release and fury and profound joy that shook the steaming water into ripples. My bones screamed, my skin prickled, and the world dissolved in a whirl of sensation. When it cleared, my perspective had changed. I was lower to the water, seeing the world through a new, vivid lens. Scents were a breathtaking symphony. Cassian's potent thunderstorm smell, the minerals of the spring, the fear and awe from the shore. I looked down and saw paws, sleek silver-gray paws resting on the sandy bottom of the hot spring. I had shifted. I was a wolf. A strange, profound silence filled the grove. I lifted my head and saw my reflection in the moonlit water. A she-wolf with fur like polished moonstone and eyes the color of the winter sky looked back. I was beautiful. I was powerful. I was whole. A low, approving rumble came from beside me. I turned. Cassian had shifted as well. His massive gray wolf form stood beside me in the water, his amber eyes glowing with a fierce, triumphant light. He nudged my shoulder with his muzzle, a gentle, claiming touch that sent a jolt of pure connection through me. It wasn't the mate bond. It was deeper than the fen's claim. It was the recognition of one powerful wolf by another. On the shore, Lyra was weeping openly. Riven was stunned. Kale was grinning wildly. I had done it. The ice was gone. My wolf was free. But as I stood there in the sacred water, my new senses humming, I caught another scent on the warm air, cutting through the mineral steam and the pack's emotions. It was faint, carried on a wayward breeze from beyond the grove, the crisp, cold scent of pine and frost, and beneath it, the specific, once familiar signature of Alpha King Kale Frostfang. He was near. And he had just felt the awakening of a powerful new wolf in the territory of his greatest rival. Cassian's head snapped up, his growl vibrating the water around us. He had smelled it too. The triumph in his eyes shifted instantly into predatory alertness. The sanctuary of the grove was broken. My awakening had just sounded a clarion call to the past I thought I had left behind. The game was no longer just about my freedom. It had become a challenge between two kings, and I, the prize that had been discarded and remade, was now standing squarely between them. The steam of the heartspring felt like a veil hiding imminent arrows. The joy of my awakening curdled, replaced by a sharp, instinctive dread. Cassian's gray wolf was a statue of tension beside me, every muscle coiled, his amber eyes scanning the mist-shrouded tree line beyond the grove. The scent of Frostfang was a stain on the warm, living air of the fen. With a fluid surge, Cassian shifted back into his human form, the water slushing off his powerful frame. "Out, now," he commanded, his voice a low, urgent growl that brooked no argument. The spell of the grove shattered. Lyra rushed forward with our clothes. My shift back was less violent than the first, a conscious folding of the wolf back into my skin, though the new presence in my mind hummed with alert energy. I dressed with trembling fingers, the reality crashing down. I was a wolf, but I was also a beacon. Riven, perimeter sweep. Cassian, with him. Lyra, get Ilara back to the settlement by the hidden ways, Cassian ordered, pulling on his trousers with swift, economical movements. Do not engage. If it's a scouting party, let them see nothing. If it's more, sound the alarm. What are you going to do? I asked, my new voice surprising me with its steadiness. Cassian fastened his belt, his gaze like chips of flint. I am going to remind the King of Frost what borders mean and what happens to those who trespass on a rival's sacred ground. He fixed me with a look that was fierce and, for a fleeting second, possessive. Your whole was magnificent, Ilara. It was also a declaration of war in his ears. Stay with Lyra. Do not stray. He shifted again, a breathtaking, rapid transformation, and the massive gray wolf melted into the shadows of the grove, silent as smoke. The journey back was a tense, silent blur. Lyra led me through paths I didn't know existed, tunnels of dense reeds, over submerged logs that served as bridges, through narrow channels and a shallow boat she pulled from hiding. My new senses were on overload, every splash, every rustle a potential threat. I could smell the lingering trail of the Frostfang scouts, 2 of them, young, eager, their scent laced with confusion and a dawning alarm. They'd definitely been close. They definitely heard. The settlement was quiet but armed when we arrived. The news had traveled faster than we had. Warriors were positioned on the high platforms, eyes scanning the mist. The mood was not of fear, but of grim readiness. My return, now radiating the clear, potent aura of a shifted wolf, caused a ripple of awe and sharpened focus. I was no longer just a protected exile. I was Pack, and my awakening had brought the enemy to our door. I retreated to my platform, but sleep was impossible. The wolf inside me paced, restless, attuned to the subtle vibrations of the fen. I could feel Cassian out there, a distant pulse of controlled fury. I could feel the alien, cold tension of the Frostfang presence, now retreating, but not gone. He returned just before dawn, shifting at the edge of the main platform. His expression was dark, satisfied in a grim way. They are done, for now. 2 young scouts sent to monitor the borders after rumors of unusual activity. They got more than they bargained for. He approached me, his gaze sweeping over me as if reassessing a weapon. They felt your awakening, Ilara, the power of it. They will report to Kyle that the wolfless Omega he discarded is not only alive, but she has found her wolf in the heart of his rival's domain, and that she is formidable. What will he do? The question was cold in my throat. Cassian's smile was all teeth. What would any proud, wounded king do? He will deny it. He will rage. And then he will come to see for himself, to reclaim what he thinks is his, or to destroy what he cannot have. He placed a hand on my shoulder, the touch heavy with intent. Your training begins in earnest at first light. Not with herbs and songs, with tooth and claw. You have the wolf. Now you must learn to be the wolf. The next week was a brutal education. My training master was not Lyra, but Riven. The stern beta had no patience for my Frostfang delicacy. He drilled me on combat shifts, the rapid, brutal transformation meant for battle, not reverie. He taught me to use my new senses tactically, to track by scent, to listen for the catch of a breath in the undergrowth, to see in the dark not just as absence of light, but as a landscape of subtle heat and movement. It was exhausting, painful, and exhilarating. My wolf was a quick learner, her instincts sharp and hungry. She understood the stakes. We ran drills until my muscles screamed, practiced takedowns in the muddy training grounds, learned to fight as a pair, human and wolf mind in seamless concert. Cassian observed every session, a silent, imposing critic. He rarely commented, but his intense focus was a weight I could feel pushing me to be faster, stronger, sharper. One evening, bruised and weary, I found him at the seeing pool. He was staring into the dark water, his profile stark in the twilight. "You're pushing her too hard," I said, not sure where the boldness came from. "The wolf is new. She needs to run free, to learn the joy of it, not just the fight." He didn't look at me. "Joy is a luxury for safe wolves, Ilara. You are a prize in a game of kings. Kael will not come for a polite visit. He will come with force to humiliate me and recapture you. Your joy must be found in your own strength, in your ability to stand, not just as my ward, but as a power of the fen in your own right. That is the only thing that will protect you." His words were hard, but for the first time I heard the fear beneath them. Not fear for himself, but a fierce, possessive fear for me. It twisted something in my chest. "Why?" I asked softly, stepping closer. "Why does it matter so much? You saved my life. You gave me sanctuary. The Fen's claim is enough. Why this relentless forging?" Finally he turned. The amber fire in his eyes was banked, glowing with a deep, unsettling intensity. "Because when I first scented you in the forest, lost, defiant, with a silence inside you that echoed like a starless night, I didn't just see a pawn, I saw a dormant storm, a queen misplaced on a board of fools." He took a step towards me, the space between us crackling. "And I wanted, more than I have wanted anything in a long, long time, to be the one to turn the key." His honesty was a shockwave. It was not a declaration of love, but a profound, ruthless recognition. He had seen my potential as a weapon, yes, but also as a symbol, his symbol, the one who proved his vision against Kael's blindness. "And now that the gate is open," I whispered, my heart hammering. "Now," he said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in the hollow of my bones, "we see what the storm will do." The confrontation came not with a declaration of war, but with a formal, icy summons. A Frostfang emissary, an older warrior with frost in his beard and disdain in his eyes, arrived at the border marshes under a flag of parley. Cassian met him there with Riven and a contingent of Fen warriors. I watched from a hidden platform, my new hearing catching every word. "Alpha King Kael Frostfang demands the return of the exile Ilara. She is a member of the Frostfang royal line, however diminished. Her place, whatever it may be, is within Frostfang territory. Harboring her is an act of aggression." Cassian's laughter was a short, harsh sound. "Demands? The king who declared her nothing, who severed bonds and cast her out to die, now demands her return? The wolf he rejected has found a new pack. She has sworn allegiance to the Fen. She is under my protection and my law. Kael has no claim here." The emissary's eyes narrowed. "She is a traitor to her blood, and you, Cassian, are stealing what is not yours, twisting her with your swamp magic. The Alpha King will not abide this insult." "Then let him not abide it." Cassian's voice dropped into a deadly calm. "Tell Kael this. The woman he knew is gone. In her place stands a shadow Fen wolf. If he sets one foot across my border to take her, he will not be retrieving a lost Omega. He will be starting a war, and he will find that the Fen does not fight on open, honorable fields. It swallows. Now get out of my sight." The emissary left, his back stiff with fury. The tension in the Fen tightened another notch. It was no longer a matter of if, but when. That night, the dream came. I was running on 4 legs through a frozen forest, the moon bright overhead. Behind me came the baying of hounds, the shouts of hunters. I was the quarry. I burst into a clearing, and there stood Kael not in his kingly robes, but in his magnificent white wolf form. His ice-blue eyes held not cold dismissal, but a terrifying, possessive hunger. "Mine," a voice echoing the dream, though his wolf muzzle did not move. You were always meant to be mine. A flawed gem is still a gem of my crown. I will have you back, even if I have to break you again to reset you." I woke with a gasp, my own wolf snarling silently in my chest. It was more than a dream. It was a warning, a projection of Kael's twisted intent. I went to Kael immediately, finding him reviewing maps of the borderlands by lamplight. I told him of the dream, leaving nothing out. He listened, his expression growing grimmer with each word. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment.
"His pride is a festering wound," Cassian finally said. "He cannot accept that he was wrong, that he threw away something of value. He will try to take you not out of love or duty, but to erase his mistake, to prove to himself and his pack that he was right all along." He looked at me, and in the flickering lamplight, his face was all stark plains and resolve. We cannot wait for him to choose the time. We must force his hand, on ground of our choosing. There is a place, the Salt Flats at the northern border. It is neutral, barren, open, a place for talk or for a fight with no shadows to hide in. You would meet him? The idea sent a chill through me. I would show him, Cassian corrected, a fierce light in his eyes. I would show him the wolf he created, the power he forfeited, and I would make him, before the eyes of the moon, renounce his claim forever, or suffer the consequences. It was a staggering gamble, a public meeting of the two alphas, with me as the living, breathing point of contention. "Will you stand with me, Alara?" he asked, the question hanging between us like a challenge. Not behind me, beside me, as the Luna of the Shadowfen. The title hit me like a physical blow. Luna, not by a forced political bond, but by earned place, by awakened power. He was offering me not just protection, but partnership, a crown of twisted willow and bog iron instead of polished moonstone. I looked at him, at this wild, ruthless, visionary king who had seen my storm when all others saw silence. I thought of the ice, now gone, of the wolf running free within me, of the pack that had given me a home without once calling me worthless. I placed my hand over the bog iron pendant on my chest, then over the crossed scars on my palm, the mark of rejection, overshadowed by the mark of allegiance. "I will stand with you, Cassian," I said, and the words felt like the truest vow I had ever spoken, "as your Luna." His smile was slow, dangerous, and filled with a predatory satisfaction that should have scared me. Instead, it lit a matching fire in my own soul. The storm was coming, and for the first time, I was not afraid of the thunder. I was ready to be the lightning. The Salt Flats were a bleached, alien landscape under a sky the color of old bone. A vast, cracked expanse of white earth stretched between the dark, tangled line of the Shadowfen and the distant, sharp peaks of the Frostfang. No plant grew here, no creature scurried. It was a place of silence and endings, chosen precisely for its stark neutrality. Our contingent emerged from the misty tree line at midday. Cassian led, a commanding figure in dark leathers, the gray in his hair catching the pale light. I walked beside him, dressed not in silks, but in the reinforced leathers of a Fen warrior, my moonstone gray hair braided back tightly. The bog iron pendant was a familiar weight, but today it felt like a standard. Behind us came Riven, Lyra, Kale, and 20 of our best warriors, moving with the quiet, fluid grace of their home. Across the flats, a mirror image appeared. From the foothills, Kale Frostfang descended. He was a vision of icy regality in silver-chased armor over white furs. His ash-blonde hair was like a crown itself. His warriors were a line of polished steel in winter pelts, their formation rigid, disciplined. The contrast between the two packs was absolute. The wild, adaptive shadows versus the polished, unyielding ice. The two groups halted, 100 paces of cracked salt separating them. The silence was immense. broken only by the sigh of a dry wind. Kale's eyes found me immediately. I saw the shock there, quickly masked by cold fury. He was not looking at the cowed Omega he had banished. He was looking at a warrior, a wolf, standing proudly beside his rival. The aura of my power, still new but undeniable, radiated from me. It shattered the narrative he had built for his pack. "Cassian," Kale's voice rang out, clear and cutting, "you parade a traitor before me. This is your answer to a king's summons?" Cassian didn't raise his voice. It carried anyway, a deep, confident rumble. "I parade no one, Frostfang. I stand with my Luna, Ilara of the Shadowfen, on neutral ground. You requested an audience. Speak your piece, but choose your next words with care. You are addressing a queen of a sovereign pack." The title, Luna and Queen, hung in the air, a deliberate provocation. Kale's jaw tightened. "Luna," he spat, "a title earned by bond and blood, not by swamp trickery. That woman's wolf was silent. It was a fact. What dark magic have you worked, Cassian, to create this mimicry?" This was the moment, the test. I felt Cassian's gaze flick to me, giving me the stage. I stepped forward one pace, my voice calm and clear, carrying over the flats. "No magic, Kale. Only a truth you were too blind, too proud to see. My wolf was not absent. It was imprisoned by fear, by the constant chilling weight of your disdain. You called it silence. It was a scream behind a wall of ice." I let my power flare, just a little. Not a shift, but a ripple of energy, a pulse of the wild, living force that now resided where emptiness had been. The Fen warriors behind me straightened. The Frostfang line shifted uneasily. "The Fen offered warmth," I continued, holding his icy gaze. "It offered acceptance for what I was, not contempt for what I was not. And in that warmth the ice melted. What you see is no mimicry. It is what you, in your cold perfection, could never allow to grow." Kale's face was a mask of rage, and something uglier, a dawning, horrified realization that he might have been catastrophically wrong. "You speak pretty words, exile, but a wolf is proven in more than words. A true Luna holds the pack's heart, leads alongside her alpha. You are a weapon he has fashioned, a pet he dresses in leather, nothing more." Cassian growled, a low warning sound. But I raised my hand, stopping him. A new fierce certainty was rising in me. "You wish to see my proof? To see the heart of the pack you think I cannot hold?" I turned my back on Kale, facing our warriors. I met Lyra's proud, tear-filled eyes, Riven's stern nod, Kale's fierce grin. I thought of the scene pool, the heart spring, the shared meals, the patient lessons. I opened my mouth, and from my human throat I issued not a word, but a sound, a pure, resonant tone that was part hum, part whistle, the first line of the Fen's oldest bonding song, the one Lyra had taught me. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then Lyra's voice joined mine, sweet and strong. Then Riven's, rough but sure. Then Kale's, and another, until all 20 Fen warriors were singing with me, their voices weaving a tapestry of sound that spoke of deep roots, still waters, and unbreakable bonds. It was a sound of home, and I was leading it.
The song ended, leaving a ringing silence more profound than before. The Frostfang warriors looked stunned. Such a display of spontaneous, heartfelt unity was alien to their rigid hierarchy. I turned back to Kale. His composure had cracked. The sight of his discarded, wolfless Omega leading a rival pack in a song of belonging was a deeper blow than any warrior's charge. "The proof," I said softly, "is not in the shifts alone, Kale. It is in the bond, and mine is here." He stared at me, and for a second I saw the ghost of the man I had once hoped for, buried under layers of pride and duty, drowning in a sea of his own mistake. Then it vanished, replaced by a king's ruthless resolve. If he could not have me as his Luna, he would not let me be Cassian's. "This mummery changes nothing," he declared, his voice ringing with forced finality. "Ilara's blood is Frostfang. Her oath, given under duress in your twisted realm, is void. I will have her back, Cassian, by treaty or by tooth. This is your last chance to avoid a war. Surrender her." Cassian laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You speak of war as if it is a threat. The Fen was born of conflict. We thrive in it." He took a step forward, his power radiating out like a pressure wave. "But for the sake of the innocents in both our packs, I offer an alternative, the Ancestors' Trial." A sharp intake of breath came from both sides. The Ancestors' Trial was an ancient, brutal rite, rarely invoked, a contest of champions, but not a physical combat alone. It was a test of worth, of spirit, of the right to a claim, judged by the silent witnesses of the past. The specifics were always unique, revealed by the elders of a neutral third pack. Kale's eyes narrowed, calculating. A direct war was risky, costly. A trial, while dangerous, offered a clean, traditional resolution, a way to save face. "What are the terms?" Kale asked, a cold smile touching his lips. He was a legendary warrior. He likely assumed he would fight for his own claim. "The claim is Ilara," Cassian said. "If your champion wins the trial, she returns to Frostfang, bound by your laws. If my champion wins, you renounce all claim to her now and forever. You acknowledge her as the Luna of the Shadowfen, and you withdraw your warriors from our border, leaving a wide, neutral belt." "And the champions?" Kale asked, a cold smile touching his lips. He was a legendary warrior. He likely assumed he would fight for his own claim. "The champions," Cassian said, his gaze locking with mine, "are the claimants themselves. Ilara will stand for the Fen, and you, Kale, will stand for Frostfang." Pandemonium. Murmurs of shock erupted from both lines. A direct contest between the exiled Omega and the Alpha King? It was unheard of. Insane. Kale's cold smile turned into a smirk of utter contempt. "You would send a newly shifted wolf, barely trained, against me? This is not a trial, Cassian. It is a sacrifice. Do you hate her so much?" But I understood. This was Cassian's ultimate act of faith. He was forcing the world, and Kale, to see me not as a prize to be fought over, but as a sovereign power in my own right. The trial would not be mere combat. It would test the very essence of our claims. My newfound strength and bond against Kale's royal authority and pride. I stepped forward again, before Cassian could reply. I looked directly at Kale, my voice ringing with a certainty that came from the wolf, from the Fen, from the ice that had melted in my soul. "I accept. I will be the Shadowfen's champion. I will face you, Kale Frostfang, in the Ancestors' Trial, and I will prove once and for all where my heart, my soul, and my wolf truly belong." The challenge hung in the saline air, a gauntlet thrown not just by Cassian, but by me. The wolfless Omega was gone. In her place stood a Luna, ready to fight for her crown. Kale's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of cold, furious astonishment. He had been outmaneuvered. To refuse would be cowardice. To accept, he would have to fight the ghost of his own mistake, a ghost that had become formidably real. He glanced at his warriors, at their uncertain faces. He had no choice. "So it be," he snarled. "The trial will be held at the next full moon, at the standing stones of the Silent Plain, overseen by the elders of the sun-dappled Glade Pack. Prepare your champion for her final lesson, Cassian. When it is over, I will take what is mine, and your swamp will run with fen blood for this insult." He turned and strode away, his warriors following like a retreating glacier. Cassian came to stand beside me as the Frostfang contingent disappeared into the foothills. The fierce pride in his eyes was like a physical warmth. "You were magnificent," he said, his voice low. The bravado of the moment faded, leaving a cold knot of fear in my stomach. I have 1 month to learn how to beat an alpha king in a trial devised by ancestors. He turned to me, his hand coming up to cradle my jaw, his thumb brushing my cheek. It was the most intimate gesture he had ever offered. "You do not have to beat him in strength, Ilara. You have to beat him in truth, and your truth is the most powerful weapon either of us has ever seen. We will train, we will prepare, but remember this, you have already won the battle that matters. You have won yourself." As we walked back to the shadowy embrace of the fen, the weight of the coming trial settled on my shoulders, but it was not the crushing weight of banishment. It was the heavy, purposeful weight of a crown. The salt flats had been a standoff. The standing stones would be a judgment. And I, Ilara, would face it not as a victim of fate, but as the Luna of the Shadowfen, with my alpha and my pack at my back, ready to howl my truth to the silent stones and the watching moon. The silent plain lived up to its name. A vast, wind-scoured plateau of gray rock, dotted with patches of stubborn lichen, stretched under a sky so vast it felt like its own kind of ocean. In its center stood the standing stones, a circle of monolithic, weathered pillars that seemed to absorb sound, creating a pocket of profound, heavy quiet. It was here, under the watchful eyes of the ancient rocks and the 3 silver-haired elders from the neutral sun-dappled glade pack, that my fate would be decided. The month of preparation had been a crucible. Cassian was a relentless, inventive taskmaster. Since the trial's nature was unknown, we trained for everything. Stealth and tracking with Riven, endurance runs through the deepest, most treacherous parts of the fen that left me gasping and covered in mud. Meditation with Lyra to strengthen my connection to my wolf and to the land's spirit. And with Cassian, something else entirely, a merging of minds. The trial will test the spirit's mettle, not just the body's strength, Cassian said. Our bond, the fen's claim, must be a bridge. Let me in, show me the wolf, and let me show you the alpha's vision. It was terrifying to open the newly freed space in my mind, so long guarded, to another. But I trusted him. Slowly, tentatively, I lowered the mental walls. I felt his presence, not as an intrusion, but as a steady, warm shadow beside my own consciousness. He showed me glimpses, the fen as he saw it, a network of living energy, a tapestry of scents and sounds and ancient memories. I showed him the exhilaration of my first run on 4 legs, the solidity of the ice before it shattered, the song of the pack that had welcomed me. Our connection wasn't the deep soul-fusing mate bond of legend. It was a pact, a partnership forged in mutual respect and a shared, dangerous purpose. But it was profound. It made us stronger together than we were apart. Now, standing at the edge of the stone circle, that connection was a quiet hum in the back of my mind, a tether to him as he stood with our pack outside the sacred perimeter. Across the circle, Kale waited. He looked regal and severe, his frost-colored armor gleaming dully in the flat light. His gaze was fixed ahead, refusing to acknowledge me. He was a king come to collect a debt. Elder Neem, the eldest of the sun-dappled glade trio, stepped into the center. Her voice, though aged, cut through the silence like a clear bell. The ancestors' trial is invoked for the claim of the one called Ilara, once of Frostfang, now of Shadowfen. Alpha Kale Frostfang, you claim her by blood and broken oath. Alpha Cassian of Shadowfen, you claim her by allegiance and awakened spirit. The ancestors will judge the truth of these claims." She lifted a weathered hand toward the stones. "The trial is threefold, as the world is threefold: body, mind, and spirit. The champions will face each test simultaneously, yet separately within the circle. The stones will bear witness and reveal the victor." My heart hammered against my ribs. 3 tests, unknown. "For the body, the test of endurance," Neem announced. "The circle is your world. You will take your wolf forms. You will not fight each other. You will run. The stones will generate a terrain of memory, a challenge unique to each. You run until one cannot. The first to stop or to leave the circle fails." Kale and I locked eyes for the first time, a flicker of cold confidence in his. I took a deep breath, feeling Cassian's steadying pulse through our bond. "Trust your wolf," his thought whispered in my mind. We shifted. My moonstone gray form felt strong, agile. Kale's white wolf was larger, a creature of majestic power and cold beauty. As our paws touched the ground within the circle, the world changed. The gray rock beneath my feet shimmered and became the polished, icy marble of the Moonstone Hall. The scent of frost and courtly perfume assaulted my nose. Phantom figures lined the edges, the judging faces of the Frostfang. I heard the echo of Kale's voice. "You are nothing." A wave of debilitating shame washed over me, a ghost of my old weakness. My steps faltered. "No," I snarled internally. "That is not my truth anymore." I focused on the hum of the bog iron pendant, now a part of my wolf's essence. I remembered the warm, damp earth of the fen, the chorus of the pack's song. The icy marble under my paws seemed to grow warmer, melting at the edges, transforming into the soft, giving mud of the swamp. I found my rhythm, running not from shame, but towards the memory of belonging. A glance showed Kale's experience was different. He was running through a dark, tangled forest that smelled of decay and shadow, the fen. He was snarling, snapping at phantom tendrils of mist, his majestic form slowed by unfamiliar, sucking ground. His test was the alien, threatening wildness of the home he had chosen. His endurance was physical, but his spirit was battling disgust and disorientation. We ran in our separate, illusory worlds. My challenge was emotional, to outrun the ghost of my old self. His was environmental, to conquer a territory that rejected his very nature. I ran until the phantom voices faded, replaced by the sound of my own steady breath and the distant, encouraging howl of my pack from beyond the stones. I saw Kale stumble, a thick root of memory tripping him. He regained his footing, but his snarl was of frustration, not focus. Suddenly, both illusions vanished. We were back on the gray rock, panting in the center of the silent stones. Neither of us had stopped. Neither had left. A draw. Elder Neem nodded. "The body endures. Now, the mind, the test of truth." The air within the circle grew thick and heavy. The stones seemed to lean in. Neem's voice echoed from all around us. "A champion must know their own heart. Speak now to the stones and the sky, the deepest truth of your claim. Not strategy, not pride, the raw, unadorned truth. The stones will know deceit." Kale shifted back to human form, drawing himself up with kingly dignity. "My truth is duty," he proclaimed, his voice ringing. "Ilara was bound to Frostfang by sacred pact. Her place, her loyalty belongs to the pack of her blood. A king cannot allow oaths to be broken, or the very foundation of law crumbles.
I claim her to restore order, to uphold the legacy I am sworn to protect." His words were noble, cold, and hollow. They spoke of law, not of her. The stones remained silent, absorbing his speech. It was my turn. I shifted back, standing smaller than him, but feeling Cassian's belief like armor. I did not speak to the elders or to Kale. I spoke to the stones, to the ancestors they represented. "My truth," I began, my voice softer but clear. "My truth is not about duty to a past I didn't choose. It is about a choice I made when I had nothing left." I looked towards where Cassian stood, a steady gray figure in the distance. He offered me a hand in the dark, not because of my bloodline, but in spite of my silence. The fen gave me a home when my own home cast me out. It saw a strength I didn't know I had, and nurtured it. I turned my gaze back to the stones, my voice gaining strength. "My truth is gratitude. My truth is loyalty earned, not demanded. I stand for the right to belong where you are seen, not just where you are placed." As the last word left my lips, one of the standing stones, the tallest one directly north, emitted a low, deep hum. A soft amber light, the color of fen fire, of Cassian's eyes, glowed from its base for a moment before fading. The elders murmured. Kale's face paled with fury. The stones had responded to my truth, not his. "The mind speaks truth," Neem said, her eyes on me with a new respect. "Now, the final test, the spirit, the test of letting go." This was the unknown, the most terrifying. The ultimate strength of a leader is knowing what to hold and what to release. To claim something truly, you must be willing to lose it for its own sake. Champions, you will face a vision of loss. You must walk through it. To cling is to fail. To release is to prove the purity of your claim. The world dissolved into pure white light. I stood not on the plain, but in a sun-dappled clearing in the shadow fen. It was peaceful, beautiful. Cassian was there, in human form, smiling at me with a warmth that made my heart ache. He held out a hand. "You did it, Ilara. The trial is won. Come home." Joy surged through me. I took a step forward, but then the scene shifted. Cassian's smile faded. Behind him, I saw the fen, but it was burning. Smoke rose from the platforms, the scent of ash and death overpowering the damp earth. Fen warriors lay still. Lyra, Riven, Kale, all gone. And it was my fault. My presence had brought Kale's wrath down upon them. This was the cost of my belonging. Cassian's image spoke, his voice hollow. "You see, this is what your freedom costs. Their blood is on your hands. The only way to save them is to go back, to surrender to Kale, to accept your place as nothing so that they can be something." The vision was a knife to the soul. It preyed on my deepest fear, that my happiness was a poison to those I loved. The pull to give in, to sacrifice myself to save them, was an almost physical force. I could end their pain. I could go back to the ice. I looked at the burning fen, at the grief on Cassian's face. The love I felt for this place, for this pack, was a roaring fire in my chest. And I understood the test. True love, true claiming, was not possession. It was not clinging even to the point of mutual destruction. It was wanting the best for the beloved, even if it meant letting go. With a sob tearing from my throat, I made my choice. I looked at the vision of Cassian. "No," I whispered, then stronger. "No, I do not claim the belonging. If this is the true cost of my belonging, then I release it. I let the fen go. Save them. Be safe, all of you, even without me." I screamed the last words,
turning my back on the burning home and the man I loved, offering them up to spare them. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. I was on my knees in the center of the stone circle, tears streaming down my face. Across from me, Cale was also kneeling, but his expression was one of twisted rage and denial. His fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. He had failed his test. His vision, I realized, must have shown him losing me to Cassian, losing face before his pack, his legacy crumbling. And he, in his pride, had clung. He had refused to let go, proving his claim was about possession, not love or duty. Elder Niam approached. She looked at Cale with pity, then at me with solemn approval. She took my hand and Cassian's, who had entered the circle, and joined them together over the center stone. "The ancestors have judged," she proclaimed, her voice carrying across the silent plain. The spirit of the Shadowfen champion showed the strength to release her claim for the good of the claimed. The spirit of the Frostfang champion clung to his. The truth of the mind was heard. The body of both endured. Therefore, the claim of Alpha Cassian is true. The claim of Alpha Cale is void. She looked at Cale, who had risen, his face a storm. "Alpha Cale Frostfang, by the law of the ancestors, you are bound to renounce all claim to Alara, now and forever. You will acknowledge her as Luna of the Shadowfen. You will withdraw your warriors and respect the new border. This is the judgment." Cale stood trembling with suppressed fury. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw the final, painful death of his illusion. He had lost. Not just the trial, but the narrative. He gave a stiff, barely perceptible nod, a king honoring a law he despised. Without another word, he turned and stalked from the circle, his pack closing around him in a silent, defeated retreat. Cassian's hand tightened around mine. He pulled me to my feet and into his arms, not as a mate claiming a prize, but as a partner sharing a hard-won victory. He rested his forehead against mine, his amber eyes blazing with pride so fierce it stole my breath. "You," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion, "my Luna, my equal." The pack's howls of triumph erupted from beyond the stones, a glorious, wild symphony that shattered the silence of the plain forever. As we walked back to them, hand in hand, the weight of the crown felt not like a burden, but like a part of me. The ice was gone. The trial was over. The future, for the first time, was entirely, brilliantly our own. The next day, Cassian sought me out as I was sorting medicinal herbs with Lyra. "A matter requires the Luna's attention," he said, his tone formal but his eyes holding a glint. "The blue-horned stag has been seen near the northern blight." The blue-horned stag was a legend, a massive, ancient creature said to be a spirit of the deep fen. Its appearance was an omen, but of what, no one agreed. Some said blessing, some said warning. Hunting it was forbidden. It was to be observed, respected. "You wish for me to see it?" I asked. "I wish for you to interpret it," he corrected. "The fen speaks to its Luna. It is your role to listen and guide the pack's understanding. I will accompany you, but the reading, that is yours." We set out at dawn, moving silently into the northern blight, a region of petrified trees and sucking silver-gray mud. The air was thick in silence, and then we saw it. The stag stood in a clearing of dead moss, its coat a shimmering ethereal blue-gray, its antlers a complex glowing crown of sapphire light. It was breathtaking, alien, and utterly peaceful. It turned its great head and looked directly at me. In that gaze, I felt no threat. I felt a deep, ancient knowing and a transfer, a flood of images and feelings, the fen thriving, green and loud with life, the pack growing, children with mud on their feet and laughter in their throats, a sense of enduring, resilient joy, and then a single clear image,
a small, sturdy cradle made of woven willow, resting in a sun-dappled spot on Cassian's platform. My breath caught. The stag dipped its head once, then turned and melted into the petrified forest, leaving only a fading trace of cool, clean energy in the air. I stood frozen, the vision burning in my mind. What did it say? Cassian's voice was low, close to my ear. I turned to him, my eyes wide. It wasn't a warning, it was a promise of growth, of life. I swallowed, the image of the cradle making my heart stutter. For the pack. I couldn't bring myself to say the rest. The implication was too vast, too personal. But as I looked into Cassian's amber eyes, I saw a reflection of my own awe and something else, a dawning, fierce hope that took my breath away. He didn't ask for details, he simply nodded, as if the most important part, the blessing, had been received. "Then we will tell the pack the fen is pleased," he said, his voice rough with an emotion he didn't name. He offered me his hand, not to lead, but in partnership. As we walked back, the new howl within me, the howl of a Luna, a woman, a wolf who had truly found her place, sang a silent, joyful song. The past's shadows still lingered, but the future, bright and full of promise, was rising like the sun through the mist, and I was no longer afraid to meet it. News of the blue-horned stag's blessings spread through the fen like a warming wind. The pack's mood, already confident, settled into a deep, contented strength. The omen was 9, interpreted as a Luna's first true communion with the spirit of our land, and it solidified my place in a way the trial's victory could not. I was not just their champion, I was their conduit to the fen's ancient heart. The vision of the cradle, however, remained my secret. It felt too fragile, too momentous to share. Yet it changed things. It painted the future in softer, more vivid colors. I found myself watching the pack's children at play, their shrieks of laughter now a sweet melody rather than just background noise. I noticed the way expectant mothers were cared for, the special foods prepared, the gentle songs sung. The fen cherished its young, its future. Cassian, too, seemed subtly altered. His prolonged absences on patrol grew shorter. He spent more time in the heart of the settlement, often involved in planning not just defense, but expansion, designing new, stronger platforms, consulting with Lyra on herb gardens that could feed more mouths. His gaze, when it rested on me, held that same fierce pride, but now it was layered with a contemplative warmth that made my skin prickle with awareness. Our mental bond, though quiet, became a landscape of shared purpose. I'd be considering the best place for a new drying rack for fish and would feel a pulse of agreement from him, along with a mental nudge towards a sunnier spot near the eastern channel. He'd be reviewing patrol routes, and I'd get a flash of insight about a vulnerable, mist-shrouded inlet I'd explored in my wolf runs. We were learning to lead in tandem, our strengths complementing. His strategic might, and my intuitive connection to the pack and the land. One afternoon, a different kind of challenge arrived, not from Frostfang, but from the fen itself. A sickness swept through the younger children, a fever that left them listless, their barks weak and thready. Lyra's usual remedies did little. Fear, a cold, familiar serpent, began to coil in the settlement. This was a threat no alpha strength could fight, no Luna's diplomacy could reason with. I moved my sleeping furs to the large central platform that served as a gathering and healing space. I helped Lyra brew teas, held sweating little bodies, sang the soothing songs she had taught me. The fear in the mother's eyes was a reflection of my own, the terror of helplessness. This was the shadow side of the deep roots we cherished. Life here was potent, but so was decay. Exhausted after 2 days and 2 nights, I slumped by the central fire, the scent of illness and bitter herbs clinging to me. Cassian found me there. He didn't offer empty comfort. He simply sat beside me, his shoulder a solid line of warmth against mine. "The fen gives and it tests," he said quietly, staring into the flames. "It is the way of wild things. We are not masters here. We are partners. Sometimes the partnership is hard." "I feel so useless," I whispered, the confession torn from me. "I can face down an alpha king, but I can't fight this." "You are fighting it," he said, his voice firm. "You are holding the line here in the heart of the pack, so the fear does not spread faster than the fever. You are giving Lyra the strength to focus on her craft. That is not uselessness, Elora. That is the root work of Aluna, the deep, unseen holding that allows the rest to stand tall." His words were a balm. He saw value in my quiet vigil, in the simple act of presence. It was a different kind of strength than I had ever been taught to value. That night, as I dozed fitfully next to a little girl named Lissa, her breathing worryingly shallow, a desperate idea came to me. It was born of the bond, of the fen's whisper, of sheer instinct. I slipped out into the pre-dawn mist and shifted. My wolf form padded silently to the Heart Spring Grove, the place of my awakening. I didn't enter the hot water. Instead, I found the special moss that grew only on the stones at its edge, a vibrant, glowing green moss Lyra called the spring's breath, said to hold concentrated life energy. Gently, I took a mouthful in my jaws, the taste electric and clean. I ran back, shifting at the edge of the settlement. In my human form, I rushed to Lyra with the moss in my hands. "The moss from the heart spring," I panted. "Could it—" Lyra's tired eyes lit with a spark of hope. "The old stories for strengthening the spirit's tether to the body." She immediately set to work, steeping the moss into a potent, glowing tea. We administered it to little Lissa first. For hours, there was no change. Then, as the sun rose, her fever broke in a sudden sweat. She whimpered, then coughed, and her eyes, wolf-pup amber, fluttered open, clear and aware. The spring's breath worked. Within 2 days, all the children were recovering, their barks returning to playful yips.
The pack's relief was a palpable wave of love that crashed over me. I hadn't fought with tooth and claw. I had listened and remembered and bridged the gap between the fen's deep magic and Lyra's healing wisdom. Cassian looked at me across the celebrating crowd, and his nod was one of profound respect. I had passed a different kind of trial. In the deep peace that followed, Cassian and I began to take walks together, not for strategy, but for company. We would walk the hidden paths, speaking of small things, the progress of a new den, the unusual pattern of bird migration this season. The easy silence between us was as comfortable as conversation. One evening, we found ourselves at the seeing pool again. The water was calm. "Do you ever miss it?" I asked softly, the question escaping before I could stop it. The simplicity of just being alpha before complications? He knew I meant before me. He was silent for a long moment. "I miss the clarity of a single purpose," he admitted. "Defend the fen, protect the pack." It was a straight line. He turned to look at me, the moonlight carving his strong features. "But a straight line is a poor thing compared to a living root system. It is strong, but it does not grow. It does not adapt. It does not surprise you." His gaze was intense. "You were a complication, a storm on the horizon, and now you are the reason the air feels electric before the rain, the reason new green shoots push through the mud. I do not miss the straight line, Alara. I would not trade this tangled, thriving forest for all the simplicity in the world." His words were not a love poem. They were a truth deeper than romance, a recognition of shared destiny, of a partnership that strengthened the very essence of what he was. It was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever said to me. Tentatively, I reached out and took his hand. His fingers, calloused and strong, closed around mine, warm and sure. No jolt of magic, just a solid, grounding connection. We stood there, hand in hand, watching the moon's reflection dance on the black water, two roots of the same great tree, sinking deeper into the rich, dark mud of a future we were building together. The peace, however, was not universal. Scouts reported that Frostfang was quiet, but it was a sullen, simmering quiet. Kale was honoring the letter of the ancestral judgment, but his pride was a wound that festered. Rumors drifted on the cold winds from the north, of the Ice King's increasing isolation, his rages over small slights, his obsession with the one that got away. He was not planning an invasion, the ancestral law protected us from that, but a man like Kale, hollowed out by humiliation, was an unpredictable, dangerous entity. He would not move against the pack, but would he move against me if chance ever offered? The thought was a sliver of ice that occasionally found its way into my heart, but I did not let it grow. I had the fen. I had the pack. I had Cassian's steady hand in mine. My roots were too deep now to be torn out by the cold winds of the past. I was the Luna of the Shadowfen, and my howl was a song of home, a warning to my enemies, and a lullaby for the future sleeping in my secret heart. The seasons turned, the fen cycling through its lush green summer and into a misty golden autumn. My life had found its rhythm, a harmonious blend of duty and deep contentment. The pack thrived. New platforms rose, children grew stronger, and the memory of the fever became a story of the Luna's resourcefulness. My bond with Cassian was the steady, strong center of it all, a partnership built on mutual respect, shared responsibility, and the quiet, growing affection that felt more durable than any passionate flame. The secret hope born from the stag's vision began to tentatively bloom. The careful cycles Lyra taught me about came and went, and a new, gentle certainty took root in my body. I hadn't told Cassian yet. I wanted the right moment when the fen itself seemed to sing with the news. That moment was stolen from me. It was during the harvest gathering, a festival to thank the fen for its bounty. The settlement was a riot of color and scent, garlands of late-blooming flowers, piles of glossy fish and fat tubers, the smoky aroma of roasting venison. Laughter and music filled the air. I stood with Cassian, presiding over the feast, his hand a warm presence on the small of my back as he pointed out a young warrior's impressive catch. Then the music died, the laughter cut off. A lone figure emerged from the tree line at the far edge of the clearing, stepping into the circle of firelight. He was haggard, his fine Frostfang clothes travel-stained and torn, his ash-blonde hair wild, but the ice in his blue eyes was sharper than ever. Kale. A collective growl rose from the pack. Warriors moved instantly, forming a wall between their alpha, their Luna, and the intruder. Cassian stepped in front of me, his body a shield, a low, dangerous rumble building in his chest. Kale held up empty hands, a gesture of hollow peace. He looked past Cassian, his gaze locking on me with an intensity that was both desperate and unhinged. I come under flag of parley. Alone. I seek only words with her. You forfeited the right to any words with my Luna the moment you challenged our claim and lost, Cassian snarled, power rolling off of him in waves. You are violating the ancestral border by being here. Give me one reason not to tear you apart where you stand. Because I am not as Alpha King, he said, and the defeat in his voice was a shocking, pitiable thing. I am here as a man, haunted by a mistake. I cannot sleep. I cannot rule. The silence in my halls, it echoes with her absence. Alara, 5 minutes. That is all I ask, to speak my piece. Then I will go, and you will never see me again. I swear it on what is left of my honor. The pack was silent, tense. This broken shell was not the proud king who had faced us on the salt flats. This was something far more dangerous, a man with nothing left to lose. Cassian looked at me, his eyes a question. This was my past, my ghost. The decision was mine. A part of me wanted to send him away, to let the warriors drive him back into the cold. But another part, the Luna who sought to understand even the darkest roots, knew that some ghosts must be faced to truly be laid to rest. And the haunted look in his eyes, it spoke of a pain that went beyond pride. It spoke of a rot in the soul. 5 minutes, I said clearly in the hushed clearing. Cassian stays, and you will speak from there. You take not one step closer. Kale nodded, a jerky motion. Cassian positioned himself slightly ahead of me, a vigilant statue. Speak, I commanded. Kale's gaze devoured me, taking in the healthy glow of my skin, the confident set of my shoulders, the bog iron pendant at my throat. You look alive, he whispered, the words like a curse. In my court, you were a portrait of quiet sorrow. Here, you are a storm given form. He swallowed. I was wrong. Not just about your wolf, about everything. I saw your quietness as weakness, your thoughtfulness as indecision. I wanted a Luna who would reflect my own power, a polished mirror. I did not understand that the strongest foundations are not marble, but ancient, tangled roots. He took a ragged breath. The trial, your truth, it broke something in me. I have spent these months trying to rebuild my kingdom, but it is a castle of ice, Alara. Beautiful, empty, and cold. My people obey out of fear, not love. My advisors speak in whispers, and all I can hear is your voice telling the stones that your heart learned to beat without fear. His voice cracked. I am drowning in fear. Fear of my own failure. Fear of the silence I created. He was baring his soul, and it was a wretched, painful sight. This was not a trick. This was the true cost of his pride. Why tell me this? I asked, my own heart aching with a complicated pity. What do you want from me? Absolution? No, he said, shaking his head. I deserve none. I want to understand. How did he gestured vaguely at Cassian, see what I was blind to? How did this place, this wild, muddy chaos, give you what a kingdom could not? I looked at Cassian, at his protective, unwavering stance. I looked at Lyra, at Riven, at the faces of my pack, fierce and loyal in the firelight. I felt the new life, a secret warmth, growing within me. The Alpha offered a hand, not a crown, I said softly, turning back to Kael. The Fen offered a home, not a cage. They asked nothing of me but to be what I was, and in that safety, I could become what I was meant to be. You wanted to fit me into your story, Kael. Cassian helped me light my own. Kael stared at me, and in his eyes, the last of his illusions crumbled to dust. He didn't see a prize to be won anymore. He saw a happiness he had destroyed for himself, a lesson learned too late. Your own story, he repeated dully. He took a step back, his shoulders slumping. Then it is truly finished. There is no place for me in it, not even as a villain. He looked at Cassian, a bleak acknowledgement passing between the two alphas. You have won, Swamp King, in every way that matters. He turned to go, a broken monarch fading into the shadows. Kael, I called out. He paused, but didn't look back. Build a new story, not on ice, but on something real. Start by listening, not to echoes, but to the hearts of your people. A kingdom can be rebuilt, even from meltwater. He was still for a long moment, then gave a single, slow nod before disappearing into the dark forest. The tension drained from the clearing, replaced by a somber quiet. The festive mood was gone. Cassian turned to me, his eyes searching my face. Are you all right? I leaned into him, drawing strength from his solid presence. Yes, I said, and realized it was true. Seeing Kael's brokenness had not reopened my wounds. It had finally sealed them. The last ghost of my old life had come, spoken its piece, and departed. There was no anger left in me, only a quiet sorrow for him and a profound gratitude for my own path. Later that night, in the privacy of my platform, I knew the time of secrets was over.
I found Cassian looking out at the moonlit swamp, his profile thoughtful. "The stag's vision?" I began, my voice barely a whisper. "It showed more than just a thriving pack." He turned, his attention absolute. "It showed a cradle," I said, placing a hand gently on my abdomen, where the new life quietly grew. Cassian's breath caught. His amber eyes widened, then blazed with a light so fierce and joyful it outshone the moon. He didn't speak. He crossed the space between us in 2 strides and gathered me in his arms, holding me as if I were the most precious, fragile, powerful thing in his world. He buried his face in my hair, and I felt the shudder of pure, unadulterated emotion run through him. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were suspiciously bright. "A heir," he breathed, the word a reverent prayer. "For the fen, for us." "For the new story," I said softly, smiling through my own tears. He kissed me then, not as a king claiming his queen, but as a man overcome by the sheer, staggering gift of the future. It was a kiss of promise, of awe, of a love that had grown in the deep mud and was now bearing unimaginable fruit. The frost of the past had come one last time, and in facing it, I had found it held no chill for me anymore. My roots were too deep, my heart too warm, my future too bright. The shadow fen had its Luna, its Alpha, and now the whispered promise of its next howl. The circle was complete, and it was just the beginning. Winter in the shadow fen was a season of profound, misty quiet. The lush greens faded to bronze and silver gray. The air grew sharp with cold that carried the scent of frozen moss and wood smoke. But within the settlement, a different kind of warmth flourished, a vibrant, protected heat centered in the Alpha's den. My pregnancy progressed under the watchful, joyful eyes of the entire pack. Lyra became my constant shadow, brewing strengthening teas and sharing the old stories of Fen Burks. The warriors, led by a fiercely proud Riven and an overly enthusiastic Kael, took extra care on patrols, their vigilance a tangible shield around our home. Cassian transformed. The fierce, often distant Alpha became astonishingly present, attentive, and tender in a way that constantly stole my breath. He would feel the baby kick through my skin, and his wonder was that of a man witnessing his first sunrise. The platform that once had been his solitary den was now our shared space, and in its sunniest corner sat the cradle, a beautiful, sturdy thing, woven from willow and bog oak by the pack's best weavers, inlaid with tiny, glowing fragments of fenfire amber. It was a symbol of the future, a promise nestled in the heart of our present. One crisp morning, with the world sheathed in hossfrost, the pains began. They were not the harsh, sudden things of battle, but deep, rolling waves, like the fen itself was shifting within me. Lyra and the senior she-wolves took charge, ushering Cassian out with firm kindness. I heard his growled protests fade as the curtain fell, leaving me in a circle of experienced, gentle hands and low, soothing chants. The hours blurred into a cycle of pain, breath, and fierce, primal focus. Lyra held my hand, her voice a steady anchor. "The fen is with you, child. It knows the rhythm of life emerging. Breathe with it. Let your wolf guide you. She knows the way." In the most intense moment, when the world narrowed to a single burning point, I reached for that inner bond, not to Cassian, but to my own she-wolf. She was there, not pacing, but settled, powerful, her blue-silver eyes calm and knowing. She showed me not fear, but immense, ancient strength. The strength of the land pushing up new growth, the strength of the river carving its path, the strength of the pack, a multitude becoming one. With a final guttural cry that was part human, part wolf, I pushed. And then there was a new sound in the world, a sharp, indignant, perfectly healthy wail. Tears streamed down my face as Lyra placed a squirming, red-faced bundle on my chest. A son! He had a shock of dark hair like his father, and when his little face screwed up and he opened his eyes, they were a stunning, clear amber, Cassian's eyes, but with a tiny, starry hint of my own blue deep within. He was perfection. The curtain was pulled aside. Cassian stood there, filling the doorway, his face pale, his own eyes wide with terror and awe I had never seen in him. He took a hesitant step forward, then another, his gaze locked on the tiny being in my arms. Lyra beamed. "Meet your son, Alpha, and your heir." Cassian slowly knelt beside the bed. He reached out a trembling finger, the calloused tip brushing the baby's impossibly small hand. The little fingers immediately curled around it, gripping with surprising strength. A shuddering breath escaped Cassian, and when he looked up at me, the love and pride in his eyes was a physical force, so immense it filled the room. "Ilara," he whispered, his voice thick. "I know," I smiled, exhausted and utterly complete. They cleaned the baby and helped me get comfortable. Cassian never left my side, holding his son as if he were made of the most delicate crystal and the strongest bog iron all at once. Finally, when we were alone, the three of us curled together in our nest of furs, Cassian spoke, his lips against my hair. "What shall we call him?" I looked at our son, at his fierce amber eyes already taking in the world. I thought of the journey, of the ice and the thaw, of the deep roots and the new growth. "Rowan," I said softly, "for the tree that grows strong in the harshest places, with roots that heal and berries that promise life." Cassian repeated the name, testing it. "Rowan." He nodded, a slow, deep satisfaction settling on his features. A fen name, a strong name, Rowan. A few days later, on a bright, cold afternoon, with the sun breaking through the mist, the pack gathered on the central platform. I stood, stronger each day, with Rowan swaddled warmly in my arms. Cassian stood beside us, his hand on my back. The entire pack was there, their faces alight with a joyful solemnity. Elder Niam had come from the sun-dappled glade at our invitation. She stepped forward, her silver hair like a crown. "Today we welcome a new life into the circle of the fen," she announced, her voice carrying. "A child born of its Alpha and its Luna, a symbol of the bond that has strengthened this pack and secured its future." She took a small bowl of water from the heart spring brought for the occasion. She dipped her fingers and touched them to Rowan's forehead. "By the water that gives life, we bless you, Rowan." She took a pinch of rich, dark fen soil from Lyra. "By the earth that gives strength, we bless you." Finally, she nodded to Cassian. Cassian shifted, just his hand, allowing a single sharp claw to extend. With utmost care, he pricked his own thumb, then mine, letting a drop of blood each fall into the spring water in the bowl. Then he did the same to Rowan's tiny heel, drawing a single pearl of blood. The 3 drops mingled in the water, Alpha, Luna, air. Niam used the mixture to draw a small, simple mark on Rowan's chest, a circle with a winding root inside. "By the blood that binds, by the bond of spirit and pact, we welcome you. Your roots are deep in this land. Your pact is your strength. Your howl will one day join the chorus. Welcome, Rowan of the Shadow Fen." As she finished, Cassian threw back his head and let out a long, powerful Alpha's howl, not of challenge, but of proclamation, of pure, undiluted joy. One by one, the pack joined him, Riven, Lyra, Kale, every warrior, every elder, every child. The air vibrated with the sound, a symphony of welcome that echoed across the marshes, declaring to the world that the fen's future had arrived. I looked down at Rowan. His amber eyes were open wide, listening to the song of his people. He didn't cry. He seemed content.
And then I added my own voice to the chorus. My howl, once a cry of loneliness, then a song of belonging, was now a lullaby of pure, fierce love. The Luna's howl, for her pack, for her alpha, for her son. As the last echoes faded into the crisp air, Cassian pulled me and Rowan close against him. The circle was complete. The exiled Omega, the wild Alpha, the ancient Fen, and now the new life that bound them all together.
The past was a ghost with no power here. The future was a bright, uncharted path through the mist, and we, the Shadow Fen pack, would walk it together, our roots intertwined, our howls forever united. The story of the banished Luna and the Swamp King was over. The story of the family that built a kingdom in the wild had just begun, and it was a story I knew with every fiber of my being that would have a very, very happy ending. Spring returned to the Shadowfen, but it was a spring unlike any before. The air, thick with the scent of blooming water lilies and new growth, also carried the bright, clean smell of a healthy pup and the rich aroma of contentment. Rowan was the sun around which our world now orbited. He grew with the fierce vitality of the fen itself, a sturdy, curious child with his father's storm gray eyes that now held permanent flecks of my sky blue. His first shift came not with the drama of my own awakening, but with the natural ease of a duckling taking to water, a brief, fuzzy transformation during a nap that left him blinking in confusion before shifting back with a giggle. He was fen-born, his connection to the land and his wolf as inherent as breathing. My role as Luna deepened and matured, with Lyra as my steady guide and Cassian as my unwavering partner. I settled into the rhythm of leadership. Disputes were mediated, traditions upheld, new ones born. The pack saw in me not just the victorious champion or the blessed mother, but the heart of their community. I learned to listen to the fen's whispers in the rustling reeds and the pack's pulse in their shared laughter. I was a bridge between the wild spirit of our home and the beating heart of its people. Cassian and I, too, found our new rhythm, the fierce strategic alpha and the intuitive nurturing Luna. We were two halves of a whole, our strengths so complementary it sometimes felt like we shared a single mind. The quiet mental bonds from the trial remained, a comforting hum of awareness and unspoken understanding. In the evenings, after Rowan was asleep in his willow cradle, we would sit together on our platform, watching the fireflies dance over the black water. We spoke of everything and nothing. Pack matters, a funny thing Rowan did, the strange behavior of the eels this season. The love between us was no longer a tentative, hopeful thing. It was a settled, powerful force, as deep and enduring as the bedrock beneath the swamp. One afternoon, while helping to gather edible shoots at the fen's edge, with a toddling Rowan clutching my leg, a scout returned at a run. His expression wasn't of alarm, but of somber curiosity. Luna, riders approach from the north, under a white banner. It's Frostfang, but not soldiers, a small party. They request parley at the border stone. My heart, so settled in its peace, gave a single hard thump. Kale. I hadn't thought of him in months, his broken figure swallowed by the winter forest. Cassian, who had been teaching a group of young warriors how to mend nets, was at my side in moments, his gaze sharp. How many? 5. The king, his beta, 2 elders, and a child. A boy. A child? Cassian and I exchanged a look. This was no martial threat. This was something else. We will meet them, Cassian said, his voice decisive. At the border stone, full honor guard. You are with me, Alara. We arrived at the large moss-covered stone that marked the agreed neutral line. Our warriors fanned out, vigilant but not hostile. From the north, the small Frostfang party emerged from the pines. Kale led, but he was changed. The desperate, haunted man from the harvest gathering was gone. In his place was a figure of weary, solemn dignity. The ice in his eyes remained, but it was the clear, hard ice of a mountain lake, not the brittle frost of madness. Beside him walked a boy of perhaps 7, with Kale's ash-blonde hair and serious blue eyes, holding the hand of an elderly woman. Kale stopped at the border stone, his party behind him. He looked first at Cassian, giving a slow, respectful nod. Alpha Cassian. Then his gaze shifted to me, and it held a complexity I couldn't unravel. Regret, respect, a quiet sadness. Luna Ilara. His voice was steady. I come under a banner of peace, to honor the ancestral judgment, and to seek a new beginning. You are welcome to speak, Alpha Kale, Cassian replied, his tone formal but not unfriendly. The Fen honors truth. Kale gestured to the boy. This is Leif, my nephew, and my chosen heir. The boy stood straight, his young eyes taking in the strange swamp dwellers with a mixture of fear and fascination. The fever that took my brother last winter, it showed me the fragility of a line built on pride alone. I have no mate, no child of my own. The future of Frostfang must be secured by worth, not just by blood. He took a deep breath, his gaze steady on me. I have spent these months trying to rebuild, as you suggested, to listen, to lead from something other than fear. It is a slow thaw, but it begins. He looked then at Cassian. I cannot change the past. The wounds I inflicted run deep. But for the sake of our packs, for the sake of the future our children will inherit, I would see an end to the frost between our lands. He motioned to one of his elders, who stepped forward with a carved wooden chest. Kale opened it. Inside, nestled on white fur, were 2 items, a beautiful luminescent pearl from the northern glaciers and a delicate silver chain woven in the pattern of frost crystals. A gift, Kale said, for the young Prince Rowan, a token of Frostfang's acknowledgement, and a hope that his generation will know our borders as places of trade and talk, not tension. It was a staggering gesture, an offering of peace from the king who once wanted to reclaim or destroy me. I looked at Cassian. His expression was guarded, thoughtful. This was my history, my ghost. He would follow my lead. I stepped forward, crossing to just our side of the border stone. I looked at young Leif, seeing not Kale's pride, but a boy shouldering a heavy destiny. Then I looked at Kale. The Shadow Fen accepts your gift in the spirit it is offered, she said, my voice clear, and we offer one in return. She nodded to Lyra, who stepped forward with a small basket. Inside was a thriving shoot of the glowing green spring's breath moss from the heart spring, potted in fen clay, and a small polished bog iron amulet on a leather thong. The moss is for healing, the iron is for strength. May Frostfang's future be strong, and its wounds heal. Kale accepted the basket, his hands careful. For a moment, the stern mask slipped, and I saw a glimpse of profound relief, of a weight lifted. Thank you, he said, the words simple and genuine. Will you break bread with us, Alpha Kale? I asked, the invitation a significant step. At the border, in the open, to discuss trade routes, the migration patterns of the caribou herds that cross both our lands, a future of neighbors, not enemies. Kale looked at his beta, at the elders, and finally at young Leif, who was now looking at our Fen warriors with less fear and more curiosity. He nodded. We will. The meal that followed was stilted at first, the silence heavy with decades of hostility, but food and the neutral grounds worked their magic. Riven and Kale's beta discovered a shared respect for tactical terrain. Lyra and the Frostfang elder exchanged notes on remedies for joint pain, and young Leif, under the watchful eye of Kale, eventually wandered close enough for Rowan, who had been brought to the edge of the clearing,
to shove a muddy frog figurine into his hands. Leif stared at it, then smiled, a small, real smile. As the Frostfang party prepared to leave, Kael approached me one last time. Cassian was close, but gave us space. "He is a fine boy," Kael said, his eyes on Rowan, who was now trying to eat a reed. "You have built a good life, Ilara, a true one." He met my gaze. "I am glad for you, and I am sorry for all of it, not as a king, but as the man who failed to see you." The apology, so long in coming, was a final piece settling into place. "The past is a frozen river, Kael," I said softly. "We cannot walk on it again, but we can let it flow and tend to the new ground it reveals. Tend to your nephew, build your new story." He gave a final, slow nod, then turned and led his people back into the pines. The Frostfang that disappeared into the trees was not the kingdom that had cast me out. It was a place beginning its own, difficult thaw. That night, as Cassian and I lay in our furs, Rowan sleeping soundly between us, I felt a profound, quiet closure. The last thread of the old life, once pulled so taut it threatened to strangle, had been gently released. "He meant it," Cassian murmured into the dark, his arm around us both. "The peace, it will hold." "I know," I whispered back, resting my head on his shoulder. The circle of our world, once broken by banishment, had not just been repaired, it had been expanded. It now encompassed not only the Shadowfen, but the possibility of a peaceful horizon. Our sun would grow in a world where the howls from the north were not challenges, but echoes across a respectful distance. The fen hummed its approval in the deep, moist dark. The roots were secure, the tree was strong, and every branch reached towards a future filled with light. Years are measured differently in the Shadowfen, not by calendars of stone, but by the thickening of cypress trunks, the deepening of channels, the gradual weathering of woven walkways, and the joyous, relentless growth of children. Rowan was the first, but not the last. 2 winters after his birth, a daughter joined our circle, Lyra, named for the wise woman who was her honorary grandmother, with hair the color of willow and eyes that held the shifting green gold of the sun through the canopy. Our family, a tiny pack within the pack, was a source of constant, vibrant life in the heart of the settlement. The peace with Frostfang, seated at the border stone, slowly took root, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. Trade routes were established, fen herbs and bog iron tools were exchanged for Frostfang wool and sturdy northern timber. Scouts from both packs met at the border to share warnings of rogue bear activity or unusual weather patterns. The silence between the territories was replaced by a cautious, respectful dialogue. Young Leif, now a serious teenager, visited twice with his uncle Kael. The visits were formal, but beneath the ceremony an understanding grew between them. They were heirs of a new legacy, one not of rivalry, but of mutual survival. They would never be brothers, but they learned to be respectful neighbors, their childhoods bridging a gap their elders had fought to create. My days were full, a beautiful tapestry of duty and love. Mornings often began with the soft chaos of our children, followed by councils with Cassian and Riven. Afternoons were for walking the fen with Lyra, the elder, learning the deeper healing songs, or listening to the pack's needs, a family seeking advice, a request for a new gathering space, a dispute over the best fishing technique. I was no longer just Cassian's counterpart. I was the soul of the community, the keeper of its stories, and the nurturer of its spirit. Cassian, my anchor and my equal, had matured into a leader of legendary wisdom. His ferocity was now a tool wielded with precision only for defense of our borders or protection of the weak. His greatest pride was not in battle trophies, but in the thriving settlement, in the laughter of the children, in the sturdy, clever hands of our son shaping his first spear under Riven's watchful eye. The love between us was the steady, deep current upon which our lives were built, a constant and reassuring presence.
One evening, on the anniversary of the ancestors' trial, we stood together at the seeing pool, as had become our tradition. Rowan and little Lyra were playing a quiet game with moss stones nearby, their laughter a sweet music. The water was calm, reflecting the first stars. "Do you ever think of her?" Cassian asked quietly, his gaze on the dark water. I leaned into him, considering. Sometimes, not with pain anymore. She feels like a character in a story someone told me long ago. A sad story, but one with a necessary middle to reach this ending. I looked up at him, at the faint lines of laughter and sun at the corners of his amber eyes. I am not her. You ensured that.
"You ensured that," he corrected, wrapping an arm around me. "I merely held the door open. You were the one brave enough to walk through it and to build a home on the other side." We were silent for a while, listening to our children and the night insects. "The fen is happy," I murmured, feeling the truth of it in the damp, living air. "The fen has its Luna," he replied, his voice a warm rumble against my temple. "And its Luna is happy. That is all it's ever wanted." The final piece of our happiness, the last secret wish of my heart, came to pass the following summer. The sun-dappled Glede elders, along with Alpha Kale and a contingent from Frostfang, arrived as invited guests for a new ceremony, one of our own making. Not a trial, but a union. In the Heartspring Grove, where my wolf had first broken free, under the dappled light of the high sun, Cassian and I stood before our packs, our allies, and our children. There were no severed bonds here, only ones being affirmed, no cold pronouncements, only warm vows. Elder Niam presided, her voice gentle. "You came to each other not by ancient pact, but by choice. Not in a hall of stone, but in a wild forest. You built not just a bond, but a kingdom. Today you seal that partnership before the fen, the ancestors, and the future." We faced each other. Cassian took my hands, his thumbs stroking the crossed scars on my palm, the old rejection forever overshadowed by our allegiance. "Ilara," he said, his voice thick with an emotion that made my eyes sting. "My storm, my solace, my equal in every breath. I vow to stand beside you, not before you, to listen to your wisdom as I do my own, to cherish our children and our pack, the family we built from trust and wild grace. My heart is rooted with yours in this soil, forever." Tears spilled freely down my cheeks. I squeezed his hands. "Cassian, my anchor, my wild king, my partner in every dream. I vow to walk with you, not behind you, to challenge you and celebrate you, to tend the home we made and guard the love that built it. My spirit runs with yours in this land, forever." We didn't exchange rings of metal, but weaves of living vine from the oldest cypress in the fen, twisted together by Lyra and Riven. As we placed them on each other's wrists, the entire gathering, fen wolves, glade elders, even the stern Frostfang visitors, let out a unified, harmonious howl. It was a sound of blessing, of joy, of a circle finally and perfectly complete. Later, during the feasting, Kale approached. He looked older, but at peace. He offered a formal bow to Cassian, then to me. "You have built something remarkable here," he said, his voice sincere. "It is an honor to witness it." He glanced at where Rowan and Leif were, with the careful awkwardness of youth, discussing spear-throwing techniques. "The future is in good hands." As the festivities wound down and the fireflies emerged, Cassian and I stole away to our platform. Our children were asleep, the pack was celebrating, and a deep, quiet joy settled over the fen. I stood at the railing, looking out over the lantern-lit walkways and dark, shimmering water. Cassian came up behind me, his arms encircling my waist, his chin resting on my head. "Do you remember," I whispered, "what you said to me that first night? That I was a challenge, a disruption?" He felt his smile against my hair. "I did, and you were. The best disruption of my life." "You said sometimes disruption is what's needed to break stagnation." I turned in his arms to face him, the amber fire in his eyes reflecting the lantern light.
You broke my stagnation, and I hope I softened your wilderness just enough. He cupped my face, his touch infinitely tender. You didn't soften it, my love. You gave it a heart. You gave it a song. He kissed me then, a kiss that tasted of promise kept and a future endlessly bright. In the distance, a wolf howled, one of ours, full and happy. Another answered, then another, until the night was alive with the song of the pack, the song of the deep roots, the song of a Luna who had been banished and the Alpha who had given her a kingdom, the song of a family and a home and a love that had thawed the deepest ice and grown something magnificent in its place. Our howls joined the chorus, two voices woven into one triumphant, joyful sound that echoed through the eternal mist, telling a story that would be whispered in the fen for generations to come. The story of the broken circle made whole, forever unbroken, under the watchful, loving eye of the moon.